In this week's episode of One Piece, Caesar Clown begins shitting his clowny pants. And that's because he has a tense confrontation with Big Mom, who only gives him 2 weeks to create the gigantification formula. We also get to see that Luffy is still running aimlessly around the seducing woods looking for his friends. Pekoms, seemingly alive, has a tense confrontation with his old buddy Capone, and he happens to be a pretty damn good father. All that and more in this week's pretty damn good episode of One Piece. Let's clear the air about one thing first. There's a brand new character introduced in this week's episode of One Piece, and he's the oldest son of the Charlotte family. He goes by the name of Perospero, and looks like a nightmare-fueled combination of Willy Wonka and the Child Catcher from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. That, and he has the power of turning anyone into candy and seemingly licking them to death. What I will say is the overall design of this guy, frankly, is just terrifying. He really does jump off the pages, and his wild, wacky, and super vertical design makes me believe that he's going to be a very fun villain, and I cannot wait to see what his eventual downfall is going to be. But considering that he's the oldest of Big Mom's children, you can expect big things from Perospero, the Candyman. And that brings us to the real star of this week's episode, who without a doubt has to be Caesar Clown. Misery loves company, and that's really the best thing about this episode, is just seeing how all of these terrible things keep happening to Caesar Clown. It seems like his entire past is finally starting to catch up with him, and now that he's face to face with Big Mom, you can just see the fear in his eyes. We also get to learn that all of the stuff he's done with her money and fundage, he's put it all towards alcohol and women. Isn't that so typical of Caesar Clown to do something so self-centered? Although Big Mom gives him one last chance to create the gigantification formula so that she can have her dream of bringing all races together in the world, all being at the same height and enjoying each other's company at a big old tea party. But with only 2 weeks to do something that mankind hasn't even been able to come close to achieving, Caesar Clown pretty much knows that he is screwed. One of the most important scenes of this episode, though, is following up on what actually happened to Pekoms. He was kidnapped by Capone and his crew, and I love that we get to spend more time with Capone and his family. He's actually married to Chiffon Charlotte, who is a very familiar-looking character. She obviously has ties to Lola, and both her and Capone actually have a son who goes by the name of Pez. Pez is hilarious looking because he already has a 5 o'clock shadow, which is funny because he's just a baby, but he's also using this pacifier that looks like a cigar. He truly is the son of a stereotypical Italian mafioso. But Capone here just again reaffirms how incredibly hardcore he is after basically just killing frickin' Pekoms on the island of Zoe. He decides, you know what, this time I'm gonna make sure it all works out. I'm gonna tie you up in chains, I'm gonna shoot you, and I'm gonna make sure you fall into a chasm filled with water and giant sharks. Capone is very thorough during this scene, and it's weird getting to see him be a family man and a killer all at once, but he's the type of character who totally wears that on his sleeves, and that makes him all the more interesting. There's also a little bit about Pedro and Brook as they go on their respective adventure, and they learn about what's been going on with Jinbei, with him getting ready to leave Big Mom's crew, but that doesn't really go anywhere, and all the stuff with Luffy and the Seducing Woods is okay. It's basically just him walking around in circles and finding all of these mirrored creatures which have been created by Brûlé the Witch, and he ties all of them up, and he literally thinks that all of his friends are multiplying. I don't know if he's smart or stupid, but it definitely does vary quite a bit with Luffy, where common sense just seems to fly out the window sometimes for this guy. He's like Goku in many respects, but it is a little inconsistent. With that in mind, I think this was a pretty solid episode of One Piece. So, what's the rundown on this week's episode of One Piece? A lot of stuff was actually going down in this episode, and while not all of it was exciting, there were some pretty big developments. The Pekom scene I thought was one of the best of the entire episode. Again, just showing how incredibly ruthless Capone is, and how he just loves playing the part of the bad guy. I love, too, that you get to see him actually trying to be a good father to his son by getting him to stop crying by putting on this goofy face, and then he just goes over and shoots Pekom. It's so strange, but it's the type of thing that One Piece can pull off so well, so we might have well just saw the official death of Pekoms in the series, and honestly, what a weird and crazy way to go. And then there's Perospero. This is a character that I've been waiting to see for a long time, and he's one of the more interesting characters from this arc, and even still in the manga, they haven't fully fleshed him out. But his overall lanky and super scary design just makes him immediately striking, that with his color scheme and his overall theme of being based around candy. The actual design of his costume is great, with these like giant pieces of candy acting as buttons going down his shirt, a giant freaking lollipop cane, not to mention his ridiculously oversized dog-like tongue, and all of the lollipops hanging out on his giant hat. He's just a character that you just can't help but not ignore for how crazy he is, and he's definitely got Caesar Clown on a short chain because he now has access to his heart. So if he screws this up, he's just going to transform him into candy and lick him to death. That's the way Perospero looks at it, and frankly, looking at him, that seems like it'd be a pretty bad way to go. So this was a pretty good episode of One Piece right here. I felt that the Brook, Pedro, and Luffy scenes paled in comparison to everything that was going on with Capone and with Caesar Clown and Big Mom and everything, not to mention the introduction of Perospero. But I think that's what truly saved this episode as well. And we got a lot of different things going on in one episode, so it makes it feel like it's moving at a much brisker pace, despite the fact that we've basically been watching Luffy run through the woods for like nearly a month. But trust me, it's leading up to something really awesome. You can see some glimpses of that in the preview. A very important character is about to arrive, and it's going to lead to a pretty epic action scene. But for now, this week's episode was a pretty solid addition to the series, which I'm going to give a 4 out of 5. Check it out, One Piece fans. If any of you did watch this week's episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comment section below. And, of course, tell me what your favorite scenes were from this episode. What did you think of the introduction of the character of Perospero? Did you think he was as creepy as I did? How is Luffy going to stop Brule the Evil Witch? Is Pekoms really dead, or will he be saved? How could he be saved from a bunch of hungry sharks? And what do you hope to see from the rest of the Whole Cake Island arc? Thank you guys for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all things One Piece related. Make sure to use your devil fruit powers to hit that like button so you can give this video a thumbs up. I'll see you guys next time. Take care, and as always, stay dandy, baby.